Hello, and welcome to Owning It, the podcast that celebrates the inspiring choices made by women who refuse to simply follow the crowd and chose the road less traveled. I'm your host, Sandhya Thukaram, and in each episode, we'll have real conversations with these incredible women who choose to carve their own path because following just isn't an option. They may not be making headlines, but every one of them is a role model. So join me and let's explore the power of choice and the inspiration it brings right here on Owning It. Preeti Raja has always struck me as being very zen. It's perhaps because she owned every one of her choices, whether it was her early banking career, marriage and move to a new city, being a mother, and now an entrepreneur on her own terms. Join me in conversation with Preeti on Owning It. Hi, Preeti. Thank you for joining me on this conversation. I was just thinking today as I was, anticipating our conversation that it's actually 10 years since we met.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's 10 years since we met at Woodside Inn in Bombay. And my memory of you 10 years ago was someone who was quietly confident, who had her point of view, but was also happy to not necessarily strike it on her own at that point. But I want to go back because I always like to go back to when we started creating an identity for ourselves. And I usually think it's at 10 and not at 18 and all of that. So take me back, Preeti, to Preeti at 10. What were your aspirations like and who were you at 10?
Hi, Sandhya. Thank you for reminding me. It's been 10 years since I've known you. It feels, it doesn't feel that long actually. I think I was a very carefree kind of a person living in the moment. I was like very outdoorsy, loved sports. Was a very simple person, did not have too many ambitions. Like I had friends telling me, oh, I want to be a famous actor. I want to be I don't think people said I want to be a millionaire in those days. They said I want to be very rich. And I was like, I don't understand all of this. I was like, oh, I just want to be happy. I think that's all that I had in my head at that time, and probably comfortable enough to not to have to worry about small things in life and have niggling worries, but to be comfortable, well off enough to be happy, reasonably happy. I think that was the goal as a child, and I don't think it has changed much in all these years.
I was just going to say, I don't think it's changed much. And I love that you, even at an early age, said, I want to be happy. But
I guess we didn't articulate it like that in those days, but come to think of it, if you asked me that question today and how I thought that day, that's what I would have. If I had consciously, somebody had asked me, I think that's what I would have said.
No, and I think you knew that, because I would think I see that of you even today. But I still want to stay with young Preeti. I do know you went to B school, right? You did your...
Yeah. I actually, I think like when you were asking me, I was good at sports. I liked the outdoors. I wanted to do things like that, but you know how it was, like you were good in studies and you tend to study more in regular traditional fields and do your commerce degree and study, did my master's in business and got to work in a bank, in a financial institution, was in corporate finance. So that became the normal trajectory of life. I think things would be different today because there are so many more options, and you see people creating careers out of things that we were not even aware of in those days. I think I would have loved to be doing ad hoc things like being outdoors, or I don't know, I was a perfectionist. I like to work with my hands a lot, maybe an artist, maybe a carpenter, something like potter, things like that were what I might have liked to have done in those days, but I wasn't really aware about my skills or my interests so vividly. It was more like a passion rather than an option. Didn't seem like and we always wanted to work in stable jobs, earning money very steadily. That seemed to be the driving force.
Tell me about when you did get the stable job. Did you enjoy it?
Actually, yes, I really enjoyed it. I think it is important to be able to earn your own money. It gives you a sense of freedom. It does give you a sense of self. It gives you a sense of belief. Being able to, value add at the job, being considered good at your job by a client, by a boss, by colleagues, gives you a sense of accomplishment. And I think all of that is necessary. Because these are, you might have heard at school, oh, she's good at this, oh, she's good at study, she's good at this. But something like working in the real world where somebody has to pay money for the work that you do is not just empty words. It's real. It's a real affirmation of who you are and what you bring to this world. I think it's important for everybody to do it. And if you can do it for a long time, it gives you that much more affirmation and confidence in yourself. I worked at it for 9 years. I had a corporate job for 8 years. 8 years. So it wasn't very long, but it was enough to understand that I stand for something. I can do something. I bring value to this world, and it was good to have that money and freedom. And when you're young, it's really good. Yeah.
No, that's lovely. So, what made you quit this job?
Yeah. So working is fun when you're single, and even when you're married. Married, it's even more fun because you have somebody to manage, home, and all the challenges of the personal life become easier, and you still have work and you have somebody to support you. It's all wonderful. But I think the minute you bring a child into the equation, everything changes. Then it becomes a big balancing act. It's as much for the man as much for the woman. But I think traditionally women tend to feel more responsible. Like even if you feel like, oh, my mom did this for me, I should be able to do this for my child. There's a little more sense of responsibility on the woman's side, and it becomes a really big balancing act. And I think it's not easy now, but it was much harder then to be a work from home mother, or be a work from home employee, or be a part-time employee. It was way much more difficult. You were either all in or you checked out. You had to do late nights, you had to travel. There was no, I mean, you could always make excuses, but then they weren't viewed well. So you wouldn't even dare make them or think about it. You wanted to be treated like an equal, right? So you wouldn't, so it was quite a tough balancing act. I managed beautifully in the first few years because I think we were in Chennai, and Raja, my husband, he had a job he was working at it for the last maybe 15 years or 10 years by then, but he was senior enough to be able to be flexible in his work. And he could, as a result, like my parents would take turns and manage my daughter until 5 p.m. when my husband would come home and look after her. And then by 8 or 8:30, I would come. And then at 8 o'clock, Raja would get back to office and finish the rest of his work and come. So I had a lot of support in raising my child. So it was difficult, but it was easy in the sense I never felt that my daughter was neglected, because she was around people very much loving and very much putting her before all their needs. So I felt I was not shortchanging my child at all. So going to work was easy, though I did miss her and all that. I knew she was well taken care of. So that was not a guilt as much. But the minute we moved cities, and I did have this whole infrastructure completely was not available, it became a big challenge. Raja had a very challenging job, and it didn't make sense at that time that I asked him to rein back, because it was really exciting. His career had really taken off. It's difficult to leave a child, because the help or the child support that we have here is like hiring a nanny, and she's basically an uneducated person, however well-meaning. I mean, a few hours here and there, that's fine. But on a daily basis, with the long hours that I had and the long hours Raja had, I mean, to have a child being looked after by an uneducated nanny did not seem on a full-time basis for many years ahead, did not seem like my daughter was 3 at that age, and it didn't look like a very sensible solution to me.
Absolutely.
I mean, so, and I thought so it was easy. It was not such a difficult decision to make, and it always felt like a very temporary decision. Your child is so small that she needs you. She can't voice her needs, and you need to be there. And then the minute school becomes intensive, and you can always get back to work, right? That seemed like how it was, but that's not how it played out.
It took longer than the few
Yeah,
years.
it takes longer. Also, I think, like child rearing is so rewarding. I mean, it's a very tough job. It's like a constant job. You're always on the job. It's like you never get off. But it's a full-time job and it's very intense. Like you have to be on, you have to be like interested. But it's so rewarding that once you start doing it, it pales in comparison to any corporate job or a paying job that you could.
No, absolutely. Like at 52,
substitute it
mom
for.
still bringing me up. So no, I can understand. And you said it so beautifully, right? Because I think a lot of times when we talk about homemakers, we don't, while there's a large part of the reality that it's not a choice, but equally, there are many women who make that choice. And like you said, it's very rewarding for that phase that you've consciously decided that for this child you brought into the world, you want to spend time nurturing that child, and what you get out of that is very rewarding. But for me, the underlying thing was, it was a choice you made at that time, that
True.
this is where you wanted to.
I had the privilege of making that choice. Like imagine if I had an EMI to pay or something like that. It was not a choice that I would have made. I would have worked around. I would have found something. I would have probably transported parents here. I was lucky to have that choice at that time, and I could make that choice.
I think choices also are defined by circumstances. But I want to now move from Preeti, who at a very young age, in hindsight, her aspiration was to be happy. And then young Preeti, the mother, who gave up a corporate career because she chose to give her time to nurture her child. And then let's get to where you are now. I love, you know me, I've been such a fan from the moment you told me about the idea of Revival Project. How did that come about? And tell me, let's talk a little bit about that journey.
While they say, like children are a full-time job, like even when they grow up, like she's 21 and she's outside and still like she needs emotional support, she's lonely and things like that. And when they're really small, you can outsource a lot of work to family, to maids, to this thing, but that emotional work can never be outsourced. And even when they grow older, it's there. But then the need, that physical constant need that kept you busy, just disappears after a few years, and then you are left with like, oh, I don't have a job and my child is grown up, and what do I do? Like, and you're, you still want to be useful, you want to do something meaningful. My aunt is a gynec, and her another aunt is a English prof, and they're all like, Preeti was so smart. Like, when they were taking tuitions, like the English prof, when she was taking tuition, she kept mine and my sister's photograph on her desk and said, these girls are really good in study, you should learn from them and all. Wow. In those days they used to do things like this to encourage children. Anyway, so they were like, you should do something. And my mom has always worked. She was a maths and science teacher, and she was also working on a lot of charitable initiatives. So obviously you want to be useful, you want to do something with your time, and you at the same time want to be available for your child when she needs you. So the whole thing was balancing that. And starting something on my own seemed to meet all of those. Like I could run it and the time that I wanted, the pace I wanted, the size I wanted. But the challenge was finding, what do you do? What is it that works? And luckily for me, I mean, I thought about a lot of things, but I always loved clothes, and I loved all the business of making clothes. But I did try out many things, like opening a bar, becoming a hairdresser. But the learning curve for many of those seemed to be really, really long, and I didn't think it was feasible. And of course, I had a husband who was in venture, so he could tell me what is scalable and what's not scalable. And he said, this doesn't work, doesn't make any sense. So it was easy to make out where your passions lie, and which of that passion could be converted into a workable business. So then that's how PRP followed. Also because I think I've been wearing Western clothes. I mean, clothes that are, like Western oriented rather than Indian clothes for very long, from all my life, with short breaks in trying to meld in college and stuff like that. But typically, and I always found it a challenge to source these clothes. And I think when I was starting TRP, I think the Revival Project, the only Western clothes that were available were from Zara. So you either wore synthetics, elegant looking, well styled synthetic garments, or you wore comfortable and not so good looking clothes from other places like Fab India or any other mass produced brands. So the options for Western clothing was limited, and all of us were yearning to dress like that. More and more of us were yearning to dress like that. So options were limited. Some of the bigger designers were making high-end clothes using Indian fabrics in a Western, Western styles and cuts, and they were really attractive, but they were very high, and there was a market, but there was nobody supplying to that market. And I always was fascinated, especially I was always fascinated because I lived in different parts of the country. So I'd seen fabrics and across the country, like I'd seen all kinds of fabrics, a variety of fabrics that's available, in linen and jamdani and organza, and all of that handmade in India. You have to make that into something wearable, and you take it to an Indian tailor, make a beautiful salwar kameez or a ghagra for you, but you can't get anything done properly in the way you want to wear it on a daily basis. Like, so I knew that there were ways and means to use handlooms for different kinds of Western garments. So you could make trousers and tops and skirts and even thin fabrics. If you could just put a lining, it could become a dress. So there were options, there were ways to do it. And I got excited the minute I saw that. So then it became a real business proposition. And that's how it all started.
I hear the passion and I hear the learning. But what did it mean to set up the business side of things? One was the product side of things, which you were learning and you were driven by your idea. But what did it mean for you to set up a business?
I think I'm just so glad that phase is behind me, because it was very, very challenging. There were days when I used to be in tears because I just couldn't move forward. There were so many challenges. I mean, first from the weaving side, because the weavers work for years, like they have worked for centuries, for generations, weaving it in a particular style. And there's a traditionally been done that way. You tell them to change this color with this. It's very difficult for them to make that change. You couldn't convince them to do it any other way. I don't blame them. This is how they've been doing for centuries. And also they don't have the financial security which will allow them to experiment with anything new. I was new. They didn't want to listen to me. So I'm just glad that I persevered, stuck through it, and finally there were some changes. So that was one. Then the production side, even after the fabric came back, then the production side was a challenge, because you tell a tailor to make something. I did lots of sampling with different tailors, and they all are fabulous at their work. But they'll put one dart here because they're used to making blouses. They'll make the top and put a dart there, and it was so many challenges of that. And to have things that, like, be professional, to adhere to a deadline, to make every garment the same size. Half an inch here and there is not acceptable. It has to be the same size. A lot of these things are a big challenge, and you can't really fight the system in day one. It takes time and takes effort, and professionalism comes slowly. All of that happened. It just was journey after journey of trying out one who's willing to change, who's willing to learn and do with you. Finally, now I have a system where all of this works. So I'm like, oh my God, like these are not even things that I need to worry about anymore. But in the beginning, these were like really big challenges. And of course, the business side, the website, the sales, and how do you know how many pieces to produce? I happily produced enough equal quantities of all, and then I realized people don't buy bottoms. They don't buy skirts and pants. They usually buy more of tops, because you can mix tops with whatever jeans you have and whatever else you have in the wardrobe, and tops are more visible, and that's what people spend money on. Sizes, what sizes do you make? And like some sizes get sold out, some just don't sell at all. And so many, I think there were challenges on photography. How do you handle a photographer? How much should we charge you? How much can you spend on that? What is a model contract? So many things. I mean, studio, lighting guy, I have no clue. Everything was blundered through. Everything was learning. And then the accounting part of it was the worst. I mean, not worst, that's the thing I knew, but that's the thing I hated doing the most.
What? Because there was little creativity there. What about pricing? Was it
Pricing
something
was,
you learned?
luckily, pricing, I think I figured out. I think it just so happened I was talking to people, meeting people. So a lot of people had told me, how do you price retail? Like, how do you price for production cost, for the stock cost, for the commission cost when somebody else is selling for you? How do you include all of that? So something that I don't know, I got lucky and I understood that part of it. The other parts of it was what took me ages to learn, and so it was just learning. I'm saying, like, there were times I was like, oh my God, I've ruined so much. I've like, all the fabric is ruined, everything is cut badly and all that. But I'm so glad I'm past it.
So you're a legit businesswoman. But I want to come to, and I'm sure a lot of people who've heard this bit of setting up business, I'm sure it would be helpful to people starting out, and it will resonate to women who've been on a similar journey. But one of the things I want to get to is, and this I think is a very powerful choice as women who want to strike out on their own, starting businesses. There's that pressure sometimes to prove something. I love that, and I don't know if it was a conscious choice or where you naturally arrived. I love that you run your business at the pace that works for you. And you've not allowed like, oh, I need to hit a certain number. I need to be this. And it doesn't mean you're not ambitious, but it's a choice that I feel is very powerful, that you've made it work for you.
I think so. I think all of us make choices that work for us. Like currently I run a business. I am passionate about it. I enjoy it. I love it. And I look after it from end to end, from the first ideation to the first weave to the first sampling to production to sales to after sales to logistics to accounting. So if I'm not passionate about it, there'll be glitch somewhere. Yeah. So I have to stay focused and do it properly. And the only way I can stay focused and do it properly when I'm doing everything is to do it at my pace. I'm selling to women like me, and the clothes I make are appeal to women who are my age, my stage in life. So I think they understand when I say, they understand that, everybody has work commitments, everybody has travel, family needs, and they understand that, and I understand their needs, and they understand that I'm off, I'm not available now, or I will, but I'm transparent and they understand that. Obviously, when I take a break, there is a fall in business. When I come back, takes a time to set it up. So that's a thing that I have chosen to do, because it's like I have to work harder to get the wheels rolling all over again. So that there is a trade-off. I do lose business, but it's not. But I'm able to pull it back and ring it up together.
Yeah, but I also think that's the thing about choices that are powerful, right? There is a trade-off, and that's why it's a choice. You're making that choice, and you're willing to give up something for that. I love that. That's one of my favorite things about you, that you
I think that's why I enjoy doing it so much, because if I didn't have those breaks or those moments to myself, I guess I wouldn't be able to be at it, right? Sincerely.
Yeah, no. I want to end, Preeti. By the way, we could go on because you and I always have something that we can keep talking about. But I want to end with looking back. Is there something, and you can decide where you want to look back to, what point. Is there something that you would have done dramatically different?
Yeah. I mean, you can always be better, right? Always. And when you look back, you can always see so many things that could have been done better. Like, especially in this journey, I think I was doing a lot of, what do you call it? Exhibitions, physical shows. And that was really good for learning, because you get right feedback and you can sense what the market wants and what people like, don't like. But I think that was not the right way to do business. And I was told from day one that I should have an online presence. And I was like, oh my God, that's so challenging. I can't do it. Like, you have some prejudices in your head and you're unable to overcome them and learn quickly. and you just keep being stubborn and doing it the old way. And then, so there are so many ways. I should have started a website earlier. I should have been online earlier. I should have done, there's so many small things like that. But in the end, all of us learn at our own pace. Nobody can hasten the learning process for you. Nobody can tell you to learn. You will learn when you're ready to learn. So I think I might have wanted to do things differently in hindsight, but I don't think it would have happened. It's just wishful thinking.
All I can say is, Preeti, I think for me as an observer and from our conversation, whether you look back or forward, where you are is, I think, that young 10-year-old who wanted to be happy. I think you've arrived there, and more power to you. And, I'm glad that happiness still remains central to who you are.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on Owning It. With every conversation with women who are taking control of their narrative, I'm constantly inspired. Don't forget to tune into the next conversation with yet another woman choosing her own path and owning it.